Today, we'll look into accounts and reports of individuals who some allege are extraterrestrials and hybrids that walk among us. We will discuss various hypotheses and motivations of non human intelligences masquerading as humans throughout the ages. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Mysteries with a History, where you'll be taken on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. And with each episode together, we will peel away the layers to look for the truth. This is going to be a very interesting conversation we're going to have today. So let me bring in my co host, Jimmy Church of Faded Black Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Christina, how are you?
Hello, hello.
It's what? What do you mean aliens among us? No, really? You think?
This is a conversation that's
It's
on a
right.
lot of people's minds. Either
It
they
is.
think people think that have these conversations that they're either crazy or that it's a possibility. And we're going to touch into everything that we can on this topic because there's a lot of alleged stories, rumors, accounts that I think need to be mentioned. And then people can make up their own minds on if they believe it or not. But that is not what we are going to do in the sense of you need to believe this. That's not what we're here for. We're just here to provide the information, and then people can say, okay, I can get that, or no, you're totally off your rocker here.
What's going on in your head? What brought this show to the audience this week? I am very curious. And you know what? Everybody's waiting for the answer. What's going on?
Recently, with the coverage when it comes to a few politicians and congressmen that have spoken to News Nation, such as Marco Rubio and Tim Burchett, they are, in a sense, I guess, hinting at this. And it's the unasked questions with all of the news coverage. I mean, how many of us have asked ourselves these exact questions? If I casually walk to Walmart, is there going to be an alien there? Or if I walk through LA, am I even going to encounter a human?
Okay. This is going to be an amazing conversation today for a lot of reasons. But I'm going to ask you this. You can ask me the same question, but I go first. Have you ever went, okay, they look strange? Have you had that moment in a restaurant at Walmart? You brought up Walmart. A lot of strange people at Walmart. Walmart is great for people watching. But have you had that moment where you scratched your head?
Oh, for sure.
Really?
Sure.
What happened?
Yeah. And I feel like it's many times, and like even caught people looking at me who look totally like different, kind of spooky even, because I'm staring so hard at these people and they're like, why are you looking at me? And I'm saying, dude, I'm so sorry. You just look a little out of place.
Yeah, you're an out of place object, an OPO. Yeah, but when that happens, and I've had it, a few strange moments. I have had people come up to me and tell me that they were aliens or that they were hybrids. And I would sit and have a conversation. I've had a few guests on the show that have also said that they were aliens, ET hybrids. Very interesting. I always look. I mean, there's always a physique thing that you kind of want to check out, but it's the eyes.
That's right.
There's something going on there. And I'm not sure. Let me just say this because we've got so much to go through today. Big eyes. Right?
What are you trying to say, Jimmy?
Big eyes. No, yours aren't. You're not ET-ish.
Okay, thank you. Because I've already been accused enough times for being a hybrid.
Really?
Yes, the amount of comments, DMs, and emails I get. They're like, your eyes are way too big. And I say, look, there's this thing called makeup. Okay. They're not that abnormally large.
Just tell them the truth. My eyes
That
are
is so true.
normal size. I'm just 3'3", and so they just appear bigger. That's all you got to say, right? Right.
You're right.
Like me, I have normal eyes. I've just got a big fat head, so they look smaller. But I look at the eyes. I do. I think the eyes are very telling, and there has been a couple of moments. I don't need to get specific, but there's been a couple of moments where I have been talking to somebody who has made some statements, but the eyes are like twice as big. You know what I mean? I
Gee,
mean, like
yeah, I do.
like
I
like
do.
like too big, and sometimes too perfect. Right? There's that
Like
part
too
too.
symmetrical.
Too bad, yeah, pretty, perfect. Yeah, symmetrical is another way to put it. And let me tell you why. Okay, this is my own thought. I would love to fire up the chat. By the way, the number is 400. We almost hit 5 last week. 5 would be great. Let's hit that 400 number today.
Hit that
Um,
like button, guys.
yeah, yeah. Is what was I saying? I was speaking about the eyes. There was something I was going to say before I said 400. Oh man, and it was good too. It was good. I forget what it is. It'll come back to me. We have so many different things to cover today, and I don't know exactly, Christina, which order you want to go in. But you did. I think we should talk about. Oh! That's what I wanted to do was fire up the chat. All right, when ET would want to come up with something that wouldn't freak us out, right? What would they analyze first? What would they consider first? I think they would consider the eyes. Okay, I really do. You can't mess with that. That's what humans do. Humans look at each other's eyes first. You look at the face. You look right. You look right in the eyes.
Right.
And if you've got that formula messed up, it's not going to work. So that's why I think that when I spot that they're too perfect, right? They're too correct. And that's my thought, and that's what I wanted to put into the chat. What do you guys think of that? I mean, when a baby is born, right? What's the first thing that happens in life? That child looks right in her mother's eyes. It's the first, your DNA is already, right, being programmed for that. And I think that's what ET would do. ET would make sure if they are going to do something on this planet, they would have to have the eyes correct. That should have been the poll.
Well, the poll is, do you believe that aliens are already here on Earth and walking among us? Yes, no, or I believe I encountered one. Well, the majority, 84%, say yes, while only 3% say, I believe I encountered one, which is really interesting. And Michael, thank you so much for supporting the channel. People in Birmingham, UK are out of this world. And Brian, thank you so much as well for that. But let's go ahead and let's really get started jumping pretty deep into today's topic. And one thing that I'd actually like to start out with is Robert Bigelow. Because he's had a fascination with UFOs and aliens, and this isn't anything new. People that are familiar with his work know his intense interest for it. Now, back in 2017, he mentioned during the program called 60 Minutes back in November of 2017, he spoke to the host at the time by the name of Laura Logan that aliens are already here on Earth, and he mentions, quote, and right under people's noses. And this really stirred up a lot of controversy during this time when it was released. Mystery Wire ended up doing a little bit deeper dive with Robert Bigelow on this. And what's really interesting, and he goes into more detail on his second interview that he does, but he says, look, in the environment that we live in, with everyone having their face stuck in their phones, aliens could be walking around anywhere and everywhere and nobody would notice because they're not looking at their surroundings like they used to. Now, if we look into the past and we can look at the Wangea, we can look at the Anunnaki, things like this, during that time frame there were very few distractions, and anything that looked otherworldly they were classified as gods, as people that need to be, or entities that need to be worshipped, that carried this infinite wisdom, that had this very advanced technology. But if something were to happen like that today, where some type of extraterrestrial would come down and say, "Hey guys, how's it going?" You would get one of two reactions. Either, "Nah, fam. No, this isn't true. This isn't real," right? That would be the lingo of today. Or they wouldn't even realize that that's happening, what's happening right in front of their eyes. In this case, what Bigelow had mentioned, it's happening right under people's noses.
Right. And here here's the thing. If ET steps off the craft and ET is green, no issues. Right?
Okay.
Okay. All right. ET steps off the craft and looks like Brad Pitt, then you've got to say, prove it. Right. And that's what Bigelow was talking about. You know, right underneath your nose, you wouldn't know. I think one of the most important points here, Christina, is a simple one. ET, trillions of them, okay, have been observing this planet and have been aware of this planet for millions, if not billions of years. They know all about us. Of course they do. They know our likes, our dislikes, our languages. They know how we dress. They know about our music. They know everything. They've been studying us. It's that simple. So by the time they get here, they've got the language down.
Well, we
They've
don't know
got
that
the
for sure, Jimmy. I
no,
mean, I would like to think so, but we're
but
not sure.
what I am suggesting here is that if that is the case, they have all the time in the world to study us. Why? So we don't freak out. So that they have those natural tendencies, so they could walk among us, like Bigelow says, right underneath our noses, passing you in the street, in Walmart, right? Where you wouldn't have the big freak out. And you would have all the time in the world, not only to study our habits and languages and accents and clothes and things like that, but it's the mundane details of physically appearing correct and maybe altering their DNA. And then the flip side, this is the other part. I don't think that they would be very far away from us in the DNA chain, right? I think that they would be very close to us already. And yeah, two arms, two legs, a head, two eyes, two ears, mouth, nose, that kind of things. Maybe even internally. I think that the DNA would be very close, and you would only have to alter a little bit of it. And we can start with something like the Anunnaki and Sitchin and the ancient Sumerian writings and those tablets, and his book that he wrote in 1976 talked about all of this, and it just makes sense.
I mean, what you're saying, I can see where you're going with this. It does make sense. And I think that we would do that, right? In the future, study a species a lot, and then kind of decipher whether their intentions are negative or positive, or whether out of, scientific curiosity or preparation for colonization, it would only be logical to study the native species and maybe modify the atmosphere a little bit. That would make sense. So why can't other entities do the same to other planets, including Earth? Now, again, we do not have the answers. We are merely just speculating on these possibilities, but it seems that it's something that should be on the table. And Android, thank you so much. He says, I might have encountered one alien in the woods back in 2018, called Jimmy, 2018, 2008, and called Jimmy a year ago. I could only hear the footsteps on leaves. My dog ran toward it, and a super bright white orb appeared. I turned on my yard floodlights, and nothing was there. Huh. That's that's really interesting. And thank you
Yeah,
so much, Android, for
that
supporting the
that
channel as
happens
well.
every day, Android. What are you planting a flag on something here? I love that experience right there from Android. And when you hear this over and over again from people that don't know each other and quite possibly don't know anything about this subject, but these are their experiences and they repeat them, and you have to step back and go, what's going on? It seems that millions of people, millions, are having these experiences, and I just don't think that it's some crazy mass psychosis.
No, there's
I don't.
I mean, now that sounds outlandish to say it's mass hysteria, mass psychosis, because there are so many stories of people that have come forward and have mentioned their very strange experiences. Now, about maybe 10% of those people have actually come forward telling their stories. There's still that 90% that keep those stories very, very deep and secure in their heart. They're not going to share those unless maybe it's a deathbed confession. But a lot of the times, when people encounter something that they simply cannot explain, it's scary. It creates fear in them. But at the same time, if they were to share that story, they might be ridiculed. Now, in today's age, 2023, we're in a different environment. It's not as much like that as it was 20 years ago, but still there is that ridicule factor, and no one wants to be in that predicament, and I don't blame them. But at the same time, while people might have some of these very fearful encounters, that doesn't stop us from asking, are there aliens walking among us? And Michael, thank you for that. He says, are we humans the aliens? I feel
Exactly.
like I feel like I
Exactly.
encounter weird people that seem
Eh,
very alien.
we can't. We cannot close down our mind to this idea. We can't, because in a general sense, we're all from the stars. All of us. Every single there's nobody here. This planet, everything came from stardust. It came from somewhere else. All right? It's that simple. When we continue to discover all of the biological elements needed for life out there in space. Space isn't destroying this stuff. Oxygen is floating around. We have clouds of water. We have amino acids and basic sugars surviving in the vacuum of space. Right? Somebody brought up tardigrades earlier. Right?
I can pull that up.
Tardigrades. I got to tell you, freakishly cute. Right? Okay.
No.
They really are. You've seen a tardigrade,
Yeah,
right?
water bears, and I don't find them cute at all. Like, their
They
body
are
is
so
adorable, nice
cute.
and plushy, but their face?
Yeah,
Uh-uh.
the face is pretty gnarly. But they survive in the vacuum of space,
That's right.
right? And so we know that life is just out there in the vacuum of space. So us being like something else out there, that's it's just the way it is. It's a numbers game. So would we or should we consider ourselves alien? We don't even know that. So yeah, we should definitely keep that on the table. Now, when we break down the different categories of aliens, except for now, we're talking about ET that walks among us, right? Okay, we're not talking about mantis beings. We're not talking about make some word reptiloids or whatever. No, we're talking about those that walk among us, and we just mentioned Sitchin, but we have the tall whites, we have the Nordics. You have the Arcturians. the Syrians, the Lyrans, the Andromedans. These are all very similar to us already. And how many times have you seen somebody that may be 100% Earthling, but looks a little strange? Now, what if you had an alien that looked very Earthling, but just a little bit off? Would you care? Would you look up from your phone?
The
Right?
majority would say no.
No, you probably would not. And that's why Robert Bigelow freaked out a lot of people, because he's a very smart guy, and the amount of success and the type of research that he has done, and the resources he's been able to pour into this, you have to respect that. But then he turns around, looks right at the camera, and goes, I remember Laura, she goes, "So is ET here?" And he goes, "Yeah." Right now, and it shocked a lot of people. But you're absolutely right under your nose. Would you look up? Probably not.
People don't know how to handle that information. I don't think we have enough primer. If I were to come out, yes, we have some great movies. Yes, great TV shows. Yes, I think in today's world we are so exposed to the alien topic. But if someone were to come forward, this is back in 2017. This is like just right during the time frame when we got that very popular article about ATIP, right? That was released by Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal and all of them. And so it's just right there. And I think just prior to that, people would have flipped out. They're like, there's no way. And or they would just kind of cancel it out of their mind. They're like, okay, whatever. Now in 2023, I feel like if that information were to come out again, which we've seen a few times, kind of people hinting at it, people I think are accepting it a little bit more, but it's still kind of in the aspect of it goes through one ear and out the other for many. Now, people such as yourself and me and people part of the UFO community were like, oh my God, they just said something wild, right?
Right,
But for
right.
your average person, they're just saying, "Oh, okay. Yeah, duh." And Mark, thank you so much for that. Also, we have 415 people watching this live, 214 likes. Clicking the like button makes the YouTube algorithm pick up these discussions on these very important topics. So make sure to do that before we even continue onward, because we still have so much to cover, and we're just scratching the surface. And I'm really glad that you brought up the types of aliens in the sense of allegedly that people have encountered that look very humanoid. Also, AJ Raffle, why do I never see anything? Like referring to aliens? Well, keep your eyes on the skies.
Yeah, just come hang out with us. We'll get you hooked up there. But
I want to get I want to get hooked up with that. Like I don't see
I know,
anything wild either.
I know. I haven't. I haven't had. I don't think. Well, only once, but I haven't had that sit down conversation either. Officially. But back to my comment earlier, because let's get to some different species, different
Right.
races.
Yes.
Because my comment earlier, right? The eyes. You'd really want perfection, right? Well, you kind of look around the world, and if look, one person's hamburger is another person's steak, right? I get that. All right. But I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Iceland and Scandinavia. There you go. You want evidence of alien? Yeah, thank you. Right there. You want evidence? Go to Greenland, go to Iceland, go to Scandinavia, the Nordics, right? Where and the description of the Nordics, which they're in a general sense. Let's just say in a general sense. 6 feet tall, blue eyes, blonde hair, fair skin, perfect. Right? They've always said that's Iceland. That's Scandinavia. Now, some say Palladian as well, and that could be directly from that star cluster. I don't know. But the Nordics is one of the top contactee descriptions that we have, Christina.
Well, and this apparently this is similar to how the tall whites look according to Charles Hall and others. And with this, before we continue, because I have a bunch of really interesting alleged stories when it comes to these entities. When it comes to the Nordics, the tall whites, and there's a few others, they look very human. Yes, they're a little bit taller than average, but to humans at least, but they could walk the streets and it would grab people's attention, but no one would put them behind a glass door in a laboratory. They're not that crazy looking. They're just tall and maybe a little bit too perfect in our eyes when it comes to humanity and society. But it is really interesting in the aspects when it comes to these entities. They have white or very blonde hair, very crystal blue eyes, very fair skin, pretty pale, tall, athletic looking, and as this rendition you can see here on screen. But it's just something that I don't think it would catch a lot of people's attention in the aspect of saying aliens, aliens, shun them, right? So something like this. But getting into Charles Hall, because I would like to just kind of touch on his story, because he was a former U.S. Air Force weather observer, and he claims to have interacted with the group of extraterrestrials he refers to as the tall whites. And the tall whites and the Nordics, they are similar, but apparently not the same. Allegedly, people that have had these encounters. But he says during the service at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada in the 1960s, his experiences have been documented in his book, and it ended up being a documentary in 2020 calling and the documentary was called Walking with the Tall Whites. Now, he describes these entities as humanoid but taller than the average human with a lifespan that exceeds 800 years. They are said to have technology far superior to ours, including the ability to manipulate weather and heal injuries. Hall claims that the tall whites have been living on Earth in the Nevada desert for at least 500 years. And there have been pretty sporadic posts on various platforms of people seeing tall albino like people with very long white hair in various places across the world. Now, is causation equaling correlation here? Don't know about that, but it is something worth mentioning. And what's also odd, and this is pretty relevant in the news, and we've both covered this before, and that has to do with Dr. Gary Nolan, a professor of pathology at Stanford Medical School. And he mentioned during the SALT Eye Connections conference saying, and I have it here, it says, I think you can go a step further. They haven't just visited, referring to aliens, but they've been here for a long time and they're still here. People talk about the wow signal, looking for extraterrestrial intelligence. The wow signal is that people see it on an almost regular basis. That's the communication that's already here. And then he continues with saying, you just need to look at your government to see what they're doing. And that's the most compelling evidence when it comes to this conversation of aliens and UFOs. Now, this also really stirred up controversy when this conversation, this interview came out back in June. But I'd like to hear your thoughts, Jimmy, and also those in the live chat, what you guys thought about what Gary Nolan had said. And Cassidy, thank you so much for the super sticker. But Jimmy, we'll start off with you. When that came forward just a month ago, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, and his statements, and they're kind of similar to Charles Hall, and there's a reason for that. Charles Hall, and like what Nolan has said, and he said it at that conference, but he also said it on my show, where the Charles Hall did not freak out. Charles Hall didn't see an octopus alien, purple with 8 legs. Charles Hall encountered a father and son, he thinks, at the time. It turned out to be a teacher and a student, right? A child. teaching out in the desert, and that's what he encountered, and he didn't freak out. Now he thought that what he was seeing is pretty unusual out in the middle of the desert, but it goes back to very reflective of Gary Nolan, where look, Gary Nolan's a DNA expert. He's one of the foremost DNA brains on this planet. And when he starts to make comments like this and allude to things, he understands. Now, is he in the know? Does he know stuff? Does he know the secret things? Sometimes he acts like he does. And why would a Stanford professor, somebody that deals with cancers and DNA and speaks at medical conferences all around the world, somebody with so much respect, turn around and make these kinds of statements, unless they're based in reality? So, yeah. And if you think about it, him and Charles Hall, kind of on the same page.
Well, if you look at a handful of these people, they're all on the same page when it comes to having these conversations. Now, there are those that have different ideas when it comes to researching alien encounters, alien abductions, one of them being Dr. David Jacobs. And this is where it's getting pretty controversial when it comes to the topic of, are aliens walking among us? And that's the conversation of the hybridization program. Dr. David Jacobs, who was a university professor at Temple University, he retired back in 2014 after teaching for 40 years as a history professor, also teaching a UFO class, the only professor in the United States to ever teach a class on aliens during this time frame, which is awesome. All right, love that already. But you have two camps when it comes to the conversation of aliens. You have those that think they're awesome. Let's have out signs like in the movie Independence Day. Let's invite them. They're all super great. And they have another category that says, no, we shouldn't trust them. They probably have really bad intentions. Why are they visiting? Why are they doing all these things and giving us promises? Blah, blah, blah. We cannot have anything to do with them. And then you have those that are kind of in the middle, being like, yeah, some are good, some are bad, from the stories that we've been told, right? So I guess you have three camps, not two, but three. And David Jacobs spoke to a lot of alien abductees. And what he realized in his research was that, look, if these entities are doing doing abductions, they're not the good guys. If they were the good guys, they would maybe ask for consent, maybe ask for permission. But in this case, they're just taking people as they please. And there's a whole aspect of research when it comes to alien hybridization. Why are they creating these creatures that are half human, half alien? Is it so that they could walk among us, that look superhuman but don't have fully human characteristics? Would they be classified as superhuman? Would they have certain abilities that humanity does not, in the sense of like telepathy or super strength, or hypnotizing people, as we hear in alien abduction stories, where sometimes the grays will say, look into my eyes, and then you kind of black out, right? These are the things that we have to ask. And the problem is that all of this involves us humans projecting our traits onto non-human intelligences. And I think this is a mistake here. How can we possibly fathom the thoughts of an alien mind that is thousands of years or more ahead of us? It isn't as black and white as most people assume it to be.
No, and we wouldn't understand. You can't literally. Bacteria is a living organism, but you're not going to stop and look at the bacteria that's in front of you and try to explain to them quantum mechanics and how to develop the internet. You're going to have to wait 1 billion years for that. So it's a wasted conversation. But the other part to this is, and there's two ways to look at this, in this hybridization program and aliens among us. Why would they do it? Well, they would probably want to and have to do it one of two ways. One, alter our atmosphere to fit their needs. Maybe they need to breathe more nitrogen than we do. Maybe more oxygen. Maybe they breathe carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide, or they've got some other chemical that they need in the atmosphere. There's that side of it. So maybe they need to alter the planet. There's a lot of research out there that points in that direction. Then there's the other side. They would have to alter their DNA to live in our atmosphere and adapt to that. So they don't have to wear a space helmet, right? So is that what is going on? They look like us. They're just very, but their anatomy requires some things that are just a little bit different. So would you adapt or would you change the environment? And the third point to all of this, which I think is one of the most valuable things that we can look at, that's the Sumerian tablets, and that's the Anunnaki. And we can't leave out the Syrians and the Dogon tribe, because that also is like Akhenaten and Egyptian, and that comes into play too, because it's all also in the same general area: North Africa, Mesopotamia, Syria, and Iraq, and Israel, and so forth, Jordan. So in that area, when we talk about the foundations and the cradles of civilization, Sitchin says in the translation that the Anunnaki arrived here, well, to mine gold, and they needed gold powder, and they needed to reflect the sunlight and the radiation. There was reasons for it, and they needed the gold here. But they got tired of mining for the gold. So they modified, did some DNA snip, and created us. Now, that is an easy thing for me to understand and comprehend than it is billions and billions of years of Darwin evolution, where I don't think we've been here long enough to develop that. Maybe a little snip happened, a little CRISPR technology with the Anunnaki 500,000 years ago, and here we are. And what does that suggest to you? Maybe we're the hybrids. Maybe we are, absolutely, because we did just appear here 300,000 years ago.
It is something that should also be considered. And Cindy, thank you for that. She says, I think an abundance of caution would be a good reaction. I would actually sit back and observe what was going on before I would form an opinion. That is the healthiest thing to do. Now, you are a part of the 5% of humanity, because most of us are reactors instead of thinkers. So I think that is so awesome. And thank you for supporting the channel as well. Now, what I would like to mention is, in doing research for today's show, I came across a lot of instances where it appears that the Men in Black acted like bullies, threatening UFO witnesses to remain silent. We've heard a lot of stories like this. So I got to wondering about the scenario of aliens living in asylum on Earth, integrating into society. For some of them, maybe still retain access to off-world vehicles. Would such a group have their own police force? Is that what the Men in Black are really doing? Help keeping the fact that there are aliens living in refuge among us. It's an interesting hypothesis. It's like the movie The Men in Black. But it's something that the more I've been looking into this and the more I've been preparing for today's show, I'm like, you know what? Why couldn't that be a possibility? Again, we do not have the answers. We do not know for sure. But this isn't something that I've heard a lot of people talk about. And I'm like, a police force, huh? We mentioned the portal police, right? The PP. But what about the Men in Black police?
Right. Why not? And there's a comment here. Yes, And now somebody, I think this is it. From Moon at Noon, consider for a minute how many Earth-like planets there are in the ET theory. Why are they here? There's only one thing here, and that is not anywhere else, right? There are literally billions of Earths. All right. But here's the but. Keep the Men in Black up here for a second. Here's the but. Water. A little too cold, just a few degrees. It's a solid. A little hotter, it's a gas. Right where Earth is, right in that right spot, we have oceans. Mars is not very far from us. Everything is evaporated. There might be some stuff there, and there probably is, and I'm sure that there is. But I can tell you from the imaging I've seen of Mars, there isn't a Bora Bora or Fiji or a Caribbean island, with beautiful turquoise blue water. That's what Earth has. Now, are there trillions of Earth-like planets out there? Yeah, Earth-like, but you have to exist right in that right spot. And so that's where the numbers, now it's still a big number. There's a lot of planets with water on it, but I can tell you this, we're definitely one of them. And there's a lot of things that make Earth a very special place. And it's not just Las Vegas, right? We have nice temperatures. We have a moon. We have the gravitational forces that happen on the oceans. And just like when you're stirring a stew, a soup, a spaghetti sauce, right? And you keep it moving, that's one thing that happens on our planet because of the moon, is everything is always mixing. Life is always, and that becomes an even more rare situation. So there must be a lot of ET interest here. And that's where the Men in Black come in. You would need to control all of the other factions out there, right? There would have to be an ET police force. There would have to be.
Okay, so here's where my mind goes, Jimmy, with this, because again, I can get what you're saying here. And Juan, thank you so much for the super sticker. But you mean that they could be here to enjoy water and a rich environment? I mean, is that what you're referring to here, Jimmy? Because our biosphere is a very complex and beautiful one for sure, and I can see that. I mean, how many of us would like to go live in Hawaii or some beautiful island, right? But I get what you're saying. Maybe Earth is a special gem of a plan for AT. Okay, I can get that. But here's my issue with this, and it's coming to me on the spot, and that is, if we do have entities that have this very advanced technology and they have an interest in Earth and they want to have it, right? Why are they letting humanity ruin their investment? That's my question.
Yeah, and it goes back to my point earlier, though, Christina. Which way is it? Are they modifying their bodies to adapt to this planet, or are they changing the atmosphere of this planet? Maybe they just needed a few degrees hotter, right? Maybe that's what's going on with climate change. Maybe I just say I'm not in any way. I was thinking about this a couple of days ago when I read the news about the 95-degree water in Florida. 95 degrees, right? Do you know how hot that's 5 degrees from boiling, right? Do you know how hot the beaches are right now in Florida and how long it's going to take to cool down, right? Just doesn't cool down right away. Now, and I sat back and I thought to myself, maybe ET likes a sauna. Maybe ET we need it where we like it. We like 70 degrees, right? 68 degrees, 70, 71, 72. All right, a little hotter than that, a little uncomfortable, a little bit cooler than that. It feels cool. That's our perfect thing. Maybe ET needs this thing to be about 98.
And
I
it's something that we also need to consider. These are all this is why we're thinking outside of the box. We're having these conversations so that we
Is that
can
a
lay
crazy
all of these
thought?
ideas on the line. It is weird,
Right.
but at the same time, maybe it's not. Also, we have 594 people watching this live, 324 likes. Let's get to 400. Come on. If you're enjoying what you're hearing so far, hit the like button because it lets YouTube know, hey, we need to cover this topic a little bit more. And Jonasai, thank you so much for the super sticker. It says, think I've met an alien. Well, pretty sure, and Jimmy will back me up. Jason quit. Totally an alien. Hashtag ramen
100%.
wagon.
100%. 100%.
Thank you for that, Jonasai. But what I wanted to get to while remaining on the story of the conversation on Men in Black is that there's actually a few encounters when it comes to these entities. We don't know if they're people. We don't know really what they are, but there's a handful of really interesting stories when it comes to the Men in Black. One of the more famous ones is Dan Aykroyd's encounter back in 2002. One of the guys from the original Ghostbusters, classic, who are you going to call, right? Well, in this case, the actor and UFO enthusiast Dan reported that he was taping a show about the paranormal when he stepped outside for a break to call Britney Spears. And what he noticed while he walked outside of the studio was a black Ford sedan, and it appeared out of nowhere. He claimed a tall, pale man in black stepped out of the car, gave Aykroyd a dirty look, and then as Aykroyd looks away for a second, he turns back to where the car should have been and it just disappeared. Now, in these cases of the Men in Black, when people have encounters, they show up really out of the blue. They make a phone call, be like, "Hey, are you available for right now?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." You hear the doorbell, the bell ring, and they're already there after they just hung up the phone. Who knows from where? But also on top of this, what catches a lot of people's attention when it comes to the Men in Black is not only their robotic mannerisms, but it's how they look. They're incredibly pale. They have no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. In some cases, they don't even have any lips. And there's one of my all-time favorite cases when it comes to the Men in Black is the Herbert Hopkins encounter, and we're going to get into that rather shortly. But it's one where we get a really good understanding, a really good detailed description of a alleged first encounter of the Men in Black. Also, Farron, thank you so much for the super sticker. As always, great show. Thank you for that. And Steve as well. Gomez, we are a small group of 4 Americans living in Germany. We love your show. Please give us a shout out. That's so awesome. Living in Germany, 4 Americans, rock on. Thank you, Steve. But when it comes to this,
Nordics. They're Nordics listening to the show. See, told you. Told you. No, see, and that's how they do it. They run under the radar. They just got their Nordic shout out by saying we're Americans living in Germany. But and then Dan Aykroyd turned to the Men in Black and said, 5 more degrees and it's boiling.
that's not actually what happened.
That's
But
what he
but
said. That's what he said.
getting into the case of the Hopkins encounter back in 1976. This is he was a psychiatrist at the time in Maine, and he claimed to have been visited by the Men in Black while he was researching a UFO case. Okay, there's a connection there. And the man was described as having no hair or eyebrows, and his skin was an unusual shade of pale white. And during the encounter, well, actually, what happened before that was Hopkins got a phone call. He says he picked up the phone, and the guy on the other side, the Men in Black, were like, "Hey, we want to meet up with you." He's like, "Yeah, sure." And then he expected 10, 20, 30 minutes to pass by before he got the visit from these random people. That's in quotation marks. As soon as he hangs up, the doorbell rings. And he's like,
Yep.
"Well, and this is the time before cell phones. This is 1976. All
Mhm.
right. So you're not just going to casually have one and be like, oh, wow. Right. No, it didn't happen at the time. But then as the story continues, is In this particular encounter, not only was Hopkins able to get a really, really close look of this person that had very robotic mannerisms, had again no hair, really, really thin lips. What he noticed that was in really odd, especially during this time period, was that he had this entity had red lipstick, but it was kind of smudged, almost to create this illusion that this thing had lips when it didn't
Yep.
actually.
Yep. Yep.
But
Yep.
then it
Keep
gets
going.
even weirder.
It does.
Do you want to finish off the
No.
story?
Yeah, because then the men in black said 5 more degrees and it's boiling. And it's just one of those things. The smeared. I thought you were going to bring up Fringe, by the way.
Oh, love it.
The depiction, and this reminds me of Fringe right here, right, right.
Yeah,
But
with September.
yeah, yeah. But the smeared lipstick part of the story always disturbed me. I
Well,
mean,
not
it's just
well, not just that, Jimmy. It gets even weirder because the men in this man asks, "Okay, I know you have 2 coins in your pocket. I want you to pull one out and give it to me." So Dr. Hopkins pulls out a penny. He gives it to the man, and the man says, "Okay, now watch carefully." And allegedly, he was able to allow the coin to disappear. But what he also mentions is that, and I'm going to pull it up right here. He continues onward. He says, do you see what I did here? Do you see what I did? Well, this could happen to you." And this totally freaked out Dr. Hopkins to the point where he wanted just kind of to drop the case. He wanted to drop the research that he was doing when it came to that particular UFO case. And he also mentioned that the man mentioned Barney, as in Betty and Barney Hill, that really, really famous case, didn't have a heart attack, just like I no longer have a coin. And it should be noted that Barney Hill actually died of a cerebral hemorrhage. And so the men in black then kind of gently suggested that Hopkins destroy any material he had related to the UFO case because what happened to the coin could happen to him as well. And it's just one of those so bizarre, outlandish stories that you'll probably ever hear when it comes to the Men in Black. I need to stress it is an alleged account, but regardless, it's one of the very, very few stories that we have where we get a really good description of what these weird things look like. But there's more to this case, Jimmy. And that's because after this whole thing happened, the man's speech began to slow down. He became a lot slower. He's like, okay, I need to leave. And as he's walking out the door, going down the stairs, it's almost like he can barely move. He's holding on to the rail. He's just trying to go down really slowly. And Hopkins thought to himself, he says, it's almost as if he like lost his charge. He was low on battery. And that's why there is this comparison that these entities have similar robotic mannerisms. But in the same sense, when it comes to this particular story, after he created this magic trick, that's really what it was. Uh, he he lost all of that energy afterward.
You would have to have some type of police force, and not only what I was suggesting earlier, Christina, not only to deal with the competing alien races that are out there, right? You only get so much time on Earth, man. You only got so much time allotted. You get 2 weeks this trip. You get 48 hours, and then you would have to have that. But you would also have to have the interaction with Earthlings too, as well, to fix and correct things. You would just have to have that. The descriptions that we have always had about the Men in Black. Now, I have had. Have you had a Men in Black experience yet?
No,
Have you been followed by a mysterious black car?
no.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Okay. It's going to happen. It
Don't
it
jinx
will.
it,
It will.
Jimmy.
It will. No, well, I can't wait for the phone call. Church, Gomez, what's up? It happened, and so the ways that these things go down, I think that there's an intimidation factor, but it always seems to happen right around a sighting. You
Right.
know, if not only in a geographic area, in the timing of, right? So maybe you had the sighting 200 miles away, you drive home, then you have the Men in Black experience. So it doesn't have to happen at the point of the sighting. But what their job is, right, trying to control either panic or your thoughts or what you're going to say, is that it didn't happen, right? It just didn't have. It was something else. They don't have to say anything. They only have to appear, right? They only have to show themselves. And that is as effective as anything, that type of intimidation. I can
Oh,
assure
yeah.
you, I can assure you, I've had my couple of bumps in the road. And you know what? I get right back in my lane and I behave. I do. I do. I do. And that's, I think that you would need some type of control mechanism in place. You would just have to have it. You can't have the universe running amok.
Well, there's also stories of when you look at these entities in the eyes, it, it almost becomes like a blackout. You almost do what they say. This isn't always the case, but this is the one of the very very few pictures that the public has when it comes to the Men in Black. And this is from a video camera back in 2008 in Niagara Falls in a hotel in Shane Sover, which is one of those stories that if you are familiar with the Men in Black, this is probably one of the first ones that you hear about. And Jimmy, I'll let you tell the story.
Well, I just had the main researcher on this case on the show last when was it, Christina? Last week, the week before, and we talked about this case extensively. And for me, there's a few strange takeaways. First off, a very quick backstory. One of the workers at the hotel had a sighting. Okay, all right. Couple of days later, now it's too complex of a case to get into. But here's the interesting part. Couple of days later, he doesn't go to work.
Right.
Calls in sick. All right. He had stuff to do, whatever. But he's not there. These two guys show up. They go to the front desk. They're acting strange. They're looking strange. And they're asking for him. Right? Now, when they said he's not here, they continued on walking through the hotel. This is a hotel lobby. The parking attendants, the valets out front, said that they pulled up in a black sedan, parked the car, and walked up. Valets saw them park the car. Okay. Nobody saw them leave. They come into the hotel, they walk down, they go through. Nobody sees them leave. Nobody knows how they left. Nobody saw the car drive away. Nobody saw them exit the building. The hotel manager found out about all of this, goes back through the security footage at the hotel, and that's where we got this. And that's the story behind it. It's the image that you have shown here, which is all over the internet, and this, yes, the story, what most people don't know is what is behind this, because they don't know the story. They see the picture. Okay, it's a couple of dudes in fedoras. You know, they look like the Blues Brothers, and they look okay. All right. No, but it's the story behind it. It's a very, very compelling case, and maybe as close as we have been officially to the Men in Black.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
Steve said, "We love you too, Jimmy." And thank you for that, Steve.
Are we 8 away? Are we 8 away?
away? If you are enjoying the conversation so far, hit the like button. It's okay. Do that right now, please. Thank you. All right, let's go on forward with this. I know we're finally hitting your thresholds. We're meeting your expectations, Jimmy, which is so exciting. My expectations too. But and I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I'm gonna go ahead and touch on it again. Why are we mentioning in particular the Men in Black when it comes to this conversation of are aliens walking among us? Well, as I had said, and I'm just going to repeat it, what if they are a type of police force to get the general public be really, really quiet when it comes to any type of exposure, when it comes to UFOs and aliens, and to threaten them, to scare them, so that these entities are able to continue to walk among us and not be scared, not be placed in a lab, not to be killed, and so on and so forth? Is that a possibility? I think it could be when there's anything that humanity does not understand. What is the first thing they do, Jimmy?
Here's the deal. I'm just going to confirm everything that you just said. I think the Men in Black are ET. All right. Now, when you look at all of the points that you just made and you continue down the line, it's the mannerisms are a bit off. Now, I'm going to go to the Bible in just a second. I'm going to do biblical references. The mannerisms are off. The suits never fit quite right. The car's a little out of date. The complexion's a bit off. The conversation, the inflections in the voice are always a little bit off. There's always nothing adds up. Nothing makes them human. All right. And then I mentioned Fringe and the Watchers. And how were the Watchers depicted in Fringe? As the Men in Black, right? No eyebrows, pale skin, fedora, always observing, trying to keep things correct, trying to keep things moving forward, trying not to let things get out of whack. And then it seems that it goes all the way back to biblical times. And the original Watchers and the way that the Anunnaki, the Dogons and the Syrians, right, the Palladians and throughout history, the Anunnaki, where this has been repeated over and over again. I don't think it's nothing new. Last night I had on Angela T. Smith on the show, Angela Thompson Smith. A remote viewer, brilliant PhD. But she said one little nugget last night. They've been here since before humans. Right? Now just think about that for a second. Just think about that. You know, you put the age of this planet in a livable thing, 2.5 billion years. Really? That's not that long. That's not.
In the aspects of space, no, it's not.
It's not. It's not. And then when you put the side of humans, okay, so let me move my microphone. Let's say 2.5 billion years is this long. Okay. Homo sapien sapien, us. Okay. Let's go with Lucy, Homo erectus, right? 2 million years. So if this is 2.5 billion years, and you have to slice this up. What is 2 million years in that 2.5 billion? It's a layer of paint on your skin on this side. And then you put human Homo sapien sapien inside of this 2.5 billion year thing. And we are talking about the thickness of an atom. Right? That's how little we have been here. So ET visiting this planet from somewhere else before us and enjoying it? Yes, of course. Are there other planets out there that are fun to visit too? Look, I keep bringing up Las Vegas, Christina. Las Vegas is cool, but you don't want to go there 5 times a year, right? You want to go somewhere else. You want to go visit somewhere else. It's the same thing here. Yeah. Earth is cool, but you know what? There's probably a planet exactly the same as Earth where they don't have humans with guns. I'm just saying, right? And why not go hang out there? They're beautiful blue water and sandy beaches. So that's all that I am suggesting here. And when Angela said that last night, she really caught my attention. You have to just stop and think between the dinosaurs and here, because that's when the atmosphere changed, right? Okay, so
Right. Well, with that, what's and we're getting a little off topic here, but with that, right, time in the aspects of our human timeline, it's so tiny compared to the vastness of the universe and the creation of the universe from our understanding. But pulling up this image of Fringe, because we touched on it several times throughout the show so far, for
love
those that
this.
haven't seen it, first of all, 100% recommend right next to Father Ted. So you got Fringe and Father Ted. All right. But in this particular picture, these entities are the Men in Black. But what's different about these particular ones versus the stories that we hear in today's world is that they're time travelers from a distant future of Earth, bringing the aspect, really, I guess we could say, of interdimensionals, maybe. But in their future, Earth was ruined and they had to evolve to a point where they couldn't reproduce without genetic abnormalities. But the show Fringe also involved a parallel dimension as well, where Earth was a quite different place. And it's a really, really excellent show. And when in 2023, when we talk about the conversation of aliens, people are now bringing in the aspect of parallel universes, interdimensional aspects. 20 years ago, that was like, you're out of your mind. You're totally crazy. Who do we have to thank for that? Jacques Vallée. We do, because he was one of the first people to bring in this idea to the public and say, what if they're not all just from space? And what if they're not all just nuts and bolts? What if from a different dimension, maybe even a different timeline? And I think that is I mean, it just adds more spices to the curry that we're making, Jimmy, because one, you need a lot of spices when it comes to delicious dishes such as that one. But at the same time, if you just stick to one ingredient like salt, your dish is going to be decently bland. Yes, edible, but just barely. If you begin to add all of these other ideas, you create a better dish, or in some might say, a bigger picture, a bigger puzzle with all of the pieces, a better mosaic. And when we bring in the idea of interdimensionals, does that answer some of the unanswered questions that we have? I think the truth will show itself to be much stranger than fiction, something that we hear so often.
And why wouldn't man, you know what I'm going to do this weekend? I mean, I'm really really busy, but I'm going to binge Fringe. I'm going to do it. It's sitting there on my drive, and I'm just going to start with going to get me some strawberry ice cream. Going to make some strawberry shakes and binge Fringe, Anna Torv. But that the aliens among us, when today, could we handle it? I think that today, I think that we have a pretty firm grasp on what chemistry is, and it's everywhere. Nitrogen, hydrogen, helium, oxygen, it's everywhere in the universe. Everything that you need for life is everywhere all the time. So, okay, so is there ET life out there? Okay, that's fine. I think that we can all accept that. ET being here on Earth and walking among us, is that a stretch? I don't think that it is. And if we really look, and listen to me, listen to every word. If we really look at what history has always said, when you meet a stranger from a strange land, you're going to make friends, you're going to trade. Some go to war, right? Some are invaders, but you're going to accept somebody that looks different, darker skin, paler skin, red hair, blonde hair, tall, fat. That part doesn't matter. If you meet somebody that looks different from you, you're still going to make friends. And that was okay 500,000 years ago. That was okay 5,000 years ago. If ET came in and was if you don't know anything about space, but if they're, just showing up in your village, they're just somebody from the other side of the ocean. It's a different race of thing. But today, it's not that kind of party. It's not. We don't look at it the same way. Stranger in a strange land. Okay, yes. And it's been written about for millennia. It's just a consideration of the way that you wanted to go over the horizon. You wanted to find a new route to India. You wanted to go discover new worlds. You wanted to do this, and you wanted other people to come in and hang out with you too as well.
And
All
at
right.
the same time, there has been this level supposedly of infiltration, and I want to touch on that because I have a case that I'd like to go over. But Steve has a question. Whatever happened to John Teeter? This is something that you're decently familiar with, and Steve,
I'm
thank you
very
for that.
familiar with John
So,
Teeter.
and in a sentence, tell us what happened to him.
John Teeter is a time traveler, and he went back. The trippy part about John Teeter, he's from 2036, right? 13 years from now. But here's the crazy thing. One of his points that he made in 1999 and 2000 before he split and went back to where he came from, you know what he said? He said the United States becomes divided. He did. And at the time in 1999, when everything was still all happy, right? I was like, what are you talking about? Everybody here gets along. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And look where we are right now. And I'm not saying John Teeter was right, but man, and it was one of the flaws that people pointed out in the John Teeter story. And right now, it's like the strongest point that you can make in the John Teeter story.
Interesting point. No, I wasn't familiar with that little tidbit. But what I did want to mention, and this is something that just really catches my interest, is Pharaoh Akhenaten. He was an Egyptian pharaoh, and it's believed by extraterrestrial theorists that he was alien.
You did it. You went there.
I went there. I really did, because it's something that it blows my mind. And there's so many things about this pharaoh that really stand out as weird. One of them being his features, not only his facial features, but his body features as well. When you went to Egypt, you were able to get a really close look at one of the very famous Akhenaten statues. And what some have begun to realize is that the pharaoh has both feminine and masculine features, some believing it to be a hermaphrodite. But what's also interesting about this was there were mentions of how tall he was. Now, we need to keep in mind that pharaohs were always depicted as incredibly tall. That was just a part of the culture, referring to them as godlike. Totally get that. So we can kind of put that little tidbit outside of the window if we wanted to, or we can keep it in, either or. It's up to you. But when we look at the statues, most of the Egyptian pharaohs of the past, they had these incredible physiques. Like, they were just like perfectly built, very, very symmetrical, not very strong features. However, with Akhenaten, you can tell he had a very, very long nose, a very, very long face, more slinty eyes, very big lips, and a body that had like a little bit of a pot belly, which we've seen in paintings of the Egyptian paintings, but not to the extent of himself. Now, if we were to compare him to any other pharaoh, as I had said a little bit earlier, they were perfect during that time frame. Very perfect jawline, cheeks, everything was symmetrical, everything was just proportionate. Not with Akhenaten. Now, what's also weird about this and this pharaoh was that the reason to why he was so famous is he said, all right, everyone, we're only going to have one God now. We're not going to have all these gods. We're not going to worship all of these entities. We're only going to have one. He was the pharaoh that did that. And this is something that has caught some people's attention. Why is that? Well, there are some alleged encounters with the Syrians, a type of extraterrestrial that are believed to be very tall. But in particular, one aspect that really stands out is that they only believe in one God as well. And whenever they travel, allegedly, that's what they're kind of pushing for. Is that the case for Akhenaten? I don't know. But the caveat of the story is that there was a lot of inbreeding in the pharaoh generations, but it was always about keeping the bloodline pure. And of course, that will often lead to severe genetic abnormalities. So we have to also keep that in mind as well. But it's something that I think we need to talk about.
Akhenaten was an alien. If you look, you're right. I took some very interesting pictures. I didn't find them right away. So, but if you look at some of the paintings of Akhenaten and the carvings, he had an elongated skull too, as well. It wasn't just the big hips and the long face and the other stuff that we find strange. But that's for me, that's not the strange part. If you are an artist, an artisan, a sculptor, a painter, right? And that's your job. And let's say you are a royal sculptor, right? Your gig is to sculpt the royal family. You are going to sculpt what you are told to sculpt. And I think that most pharaohs lied. They had those guys give them, small hips and.
Well, now we have Photoshop. Nothing's changed in a few hundred years.
It's the same thing, right? So you've got these pharaohs and chariots, slinging arrows and these things. But now with Akhenaten, if I'm the sculptor and I'm like, dude, you really want me to do you just how you look? Because your hips are this big. Your waist is like this. And you've got boobs. And do you know how big your lips are? Yeah, I want you to carve me exactly as I am. And if you look at all of the depictions of Akhenaten, they all look similar. And he wanted himself saved and preserved for history exactly as he was. You're right about that. He brought in the single monotheism, Ra. He got rid of the priests. He got rid of the temples. He changed the religious system. He built a new capital. He left in Nefertiti and everything that happened around him. It was a crazy time. But when you look at Akhenaten, you can go all over Egypt and read all of the books that you want and look at how Egyptians depicted themselves. The only one that was different was Akhenaten. And I think it's accurate. And it's really weird. You look at papyrus or a carving on a wall or the statue. This is one of the statues. I saw the other one. And by the way, the statues are huge. And in the statue that I saw, I'm not saying it's life size or anything. It was 20 feet tall. Across in the same museum, Christina, talk about aliens among us. So here's the statue of Akhenaten. This big museum, right? But right on the opposite wall, there is a wooden sarcophagus, not a stone, a wooden. I swear to you, this thing is 30 feet. 30 feet. So what was the mummy that was inside of that? And what was the stone sarcophagus that was on the outside of that? How big, and the Russian dolls, right? So how many mummies, caskets are inside of that? My point being, the one that was on the other side of the wall, like Akhenaten, was in proportion. It wasn't like it was massively fat so you could put other smaller ones in there. No, it looked like it was for a body. It was a wooden carved sarcophagus in perfect proportion. And it was like 30 feet. It was huge.
That's
So,
wild.
yeah. And when you look at Akhenaten and you look at these statues of him, I mean, I couldn't. I wish I found the pictures. I have them here on my computer somewhere. But I took a bunch, side view, front, and wow. So yeah, I'm okay. I think Akhenaten was an alien. Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. Was it also proven that one of the artifacts found in the hands from King Tut, that the materials don't come from Earth? Yes. Okay. Actually, you have, Christina, can I just say this? You've got a smart audience. Smart. Just smart. A dagger, the blade, meteorite. Dun dun dun. I always am fascinated with that. They use meteorite a lot. Yeah, jewelry and things, but in this specific case, I don't know if it was King Tut. And here's the other thing. But yeah, the dagger was meteorite. Never found, haven't yet, Akhenaten's tomb. Haven't found Nefertiti's tomb. Yeah.
Well, something else to bring up, because we only have a few minutes left, are the Anunnaki. We touched on them before a little bit earlier today, but I'll go into just a little bit more detail for the remaining time, because these beings were believed to be incredibly tall compared to your average human. And they had these meticulous beards, amazing curly hair, as we can see here. But what was really interesting about these entities were in Mesopotamia, they were classified as gods because of their supposedly because of their advanced technology, probably because of their height, probably because of the way that they looked as well, which was different to those in Mesopotamia. But this is something else that makes me question the times in the past and maybe even in the present where people have claimed to have been visited by an angel, visited by God, or have it been during this back in the day or in present times. Were they, or would it be classified as an alien? The thing is that it's all about perspective in some aspects, and I mentioned this so many times. When we look at the aspect of aliens and demons, they come from different realms. Therefore, they would be classified as interdimensionals. They're not from Earth, so that anything that's not from Earth is alien. All right, that's what it means. But when we look at it from that aspect, people would say, no, 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 it wasn't an alien. I know what it was. It was an angel or it was a demon. How could it be an alien? Well, it's all about these titles that really, really confuse people. And it's the perspectives that we have, the cultures that we grew up in, is going to help us perceive the world around us. But what would the Anunnaki look like today if they were wearing contemporary clothes of today? What do you think, Jimmy? Are they still here?
They're hosting a show called Mysteries with a History. Yeah. Dun dun dun. See here when Sitchin, his book, I mentioned it earlier, The 12th Planet, 1976. And he says in the book, and I've got to tell you, there was only so many people, and the numbers that were thrown around were like 12 people on Earth that could read Sumerian tablets. Okay. All right. And he was one of them. So he did the translations, and he said that the Anunnaki were actually advanced ETs that were humans humans. They were just like us, and had the same issues that we did. They had the same personality conflicts. They fought. They were happy. They partied. They went to war. They did all the things that we did. They were also lazy, and they needed us. They came here for gold, for their planet Nibiru. Oh, by the way, the new episode, spoiler alert, of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, Nibiru. Yeah, they go to Nibiru. All right, I'm not ruining anything, but it was pretty cool to see that planet Nibiru. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Anyway, that their planet Nibiru needed gold powdered in the atmosphere to reflect and protect their planet, and they didn't have enough of it. Here's where, and so they cloned humans to mine the gold for the Anunnaki. Here's the strange part about this. You ready?
Mhm.
Look at the photographs of astronauts in space with their shields down. Gold. Ah. Sitchin wasn't that far off. You look at the lunar lander, Eagle. Look at what's it covered with? Gold foil. Dun dun dun. Right? It's like wait a minute here. The mentions of this in that respect in ancient, we're talking about ancient 5, 6, 7, 8,000 year old text telling this story when it turns out in the 20th century, that's exactly what we need as humans to survive in space. Think about that for a second. That's kind of crazy. And now, are we like them? Are they like us? And are we talking about the same things? You only have to look at history, look at the Anunnaki, look at the Sumerian tablets, and come to your own conclusions and do your own research. But I found that fascinating. They needed to protect Nibiru with powdered gold. Our astronauts need to leave the capsule. They flip that visor down, and it's coated with gold.
Dun dun dun.
I love that. I love that part. What did Steve say? One of the most interesting things about the Annalise is the stone tablets with the solar system carvers. I don't know what the Annalise. Is that what that says? Annalise? Am I
It
reading that?
does. Yeah, I'm reading the same thing. I'm also not familiar with it, but Steve, please let us know what that is, and thank you for that as well, because I'm not familiar with it.
I think. Wait a minute. Are you talking about the Dogon tribe and the Syrian star system? Is that what you're referring to? Line up in 1939. Steve, I would love to know exactly what you're talking about. And we did it again. We went over. Did we hit 500? Let me see. 518.
Jimmy, thank you so much for doing today's show with me. It was such a great conversation.
518. I love you guys. I love everybody here. Really? Did we really hit 518? Is that what I saw? It just got covered up.
For the live. Thank you for that, Jimmy.
Thank you. I'm going to type this out right now. And now,
keep adding to that. Those that are jumping in, hit the like button if you enjoyed the conversation today. And also make sure to come by tomorrow for strange news as well.
Thank you so much, Christina. Tonight, can I tell everybody what I'm doing tonight on Fade to Black? It's your show. I don't want to
tell us.
Is it okay? I've got Robert Clotworthy on the show tonight.
Nice.
The voice of Secret of Skinwalker Ranch.
Nice.
It's in Aliens. And so I've agreed with Robert. He is going to do the show tonight in my voice.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
I am going to imitate him.
So make sure to tune in to that show tonight. Jimmy, thank you so much. I'm going to put you backstage, okay? Awesome. Another great show, as it is every single show that we do right here on this channel. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. It lets YouTube know that you want more conversations like these. Also, follow me on Twitter at eyes_on_the_skies for all of my updates and news. Also, check out my Instagram at Strange Paradigms for pictures and reels. And of course, if you want to speak to 2,000 other like minded members, come join the Discord server. I know one of my amazing moderators will place that link in the live chat for you to join. Share your thoughts, your insights, your opinions, your experiences, and more. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because we do a bunch of live shows right here every single week. Tomorrow is Strange News at 3 p.m. PST, where I'll be covering all the strange news and mysterious headlines from around the world. You do not want to miss that show. I will see all of you tomorrow. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.